So we've come down to Todber Manor Fisheries to run through a bit of method feeder fishing. Now, one of the big questions we always get asked is ground bait versus micros. And I'm here today to sort of show you haven't got to choose between one or the other. Throughout your day, you can end up catching on both, a mixture. I've got mixtures of ground bait and micros on their own, or ground bait on its own. It's something that you can play around with as the session develops. The ground bait I like to use is a mixture 50-50 of milled betaine pellets and carp super blend. Mix that with just water, riddle it off, and it gives you a nice fine mix for that. The pellets I use, again, I'm carp fishing, so I use Catalyst. I'm using Catalyst 2mm micros. I've literally soaked them for 7-8 minutes, drained them off, and that's done me. 20 minutes later, they're ready to go. And in my other tub, I have got a mixture of ground bait and micros. At the minute, it's mixed up 50-50. To get my mixture, you just use a pole cup. And I tend to start with this because who's to say one way or the other, one's right and one's wrong. So by starting with a mixture, feel your way in. Then I can always add more micros to this if I feel like they want more particles. I can always add more ground bait if I feel like they want less particles, or I could just go with neat ground bait or neat micros, depending on what the fish are sort of telling me. So the signs I'm looking for when starting on the sort of 50-50 mix would be, one, am I getting pestered by small fish? If I'm getting pestered by small fish, then you want to cut the ground bait out almost and have more and more micros in your mix. And at the same time, if you're getting loads of indications on your feeder, you're not getting no proper bites, then I'd probably cut the micros out a bit and have more ground bait, because what you've probably got then is fish are getting preoccupied with the micros and they're not actually taking your hook bait. So now the bait's sorted, I want to just quickly go through what sort of depth you should be fishing in. Initially, I'll start off 3 or 4 meters off the island. It's very shallow here. So I'm starting off, it's cold. They don't want to go right up in the shallow water yet. But again, I could be changing depths quite a lot. I could be starting off here, you have initial run of fish and then you have to wait ages for bites. Well, that's telling me that you're in the wrong depth. So I'd put a couple of winds on my reel, reclip up and sort of come back in the deeper water. And you just got to sort of try and find the fish this time of year. The fish don't necessarily come to you. You've got to find them. Again, it could go the other way, where I could start off the island, get that initial run of fish, not catch, come back in the deeper water, not get anything at all, and then I probably have to go the other way. I actually have to go into the shallow water. But they're things that you can sort of play around with on the day, because it's different every time you go. So I've just looked into something that feels not as big as we have been catching, and whilst you're method feeder fishing, it's so common to bounce the hook out the fish's mouth that you don't want to be playing your fish like you would a normal average sized carp. You just want to stick the rod low and just keep winding nice and gradually, and the fish will just follow the rod tip until you get it to where you want to net it. We don't lift the rod up then. You can just see now the rod's just starting to point downwards, which means the fish is coming underneath the rod tip. And he's starting to fight now under the rod tip, which is normal for these sort of fish, to be fair. But this is when the hook can get bounced out their mouth. And there he is, with a nice orange hook bait poking out his mouth. These are the ones that could be an absolute nightmare for losing as you're winding in. And just by pointing the rod low, just keep winding. More often than not, you'll get them in. So that's the end of our session today. Hopefully you've learnt a few tips and it will put a few more fish on the bank.